Hello, my sweet friends, and welcome to episode 3 of Sewing Holiday Happiness. My name is Becky, and I thank you so much for stopping by. Today, we are going to be stitching up this lovely set of nesting, reversible fabric baskets. And depending on the fabric that you choose, these baskets are perfect for everyone from infants to grandparents. You can have toys, diapers, books, all kinds of things can be stored in these beautiful little fabric baskets. Well, there is lots of fun in store today, so let's get this project started. So for each of your baskets, you're going to need 2 squares of your outer fabric, 2 squares of your lining fabric, and 2 squares of batting or any other type of interfacing of your choice to give your basket some stability and body. And I am using the warm and white cotton batting from mine. And you can make your baskets whatever size you choose. And I am using a 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch square for each of my pieces here. And when we begin putting everything together, we're going to be batch sewing them. So you're going to spend more time preparing your fabric than you actually do sewing them because they come together so quickly. To assemble each basket, start with your lining pieces right side up. Place your outer fabric pieces on top of those right sides together. This is going to be our top here. So if you do have a directional fabric, make sure that they are going in this direction. And then take your batting pieces and lay them on the back of your outer fabric pieces. And of course, if you were using fusible fleece, you would iron it to the back of your outer fabric pieces. And then you would pin or clip those top edges together. Now, if you wanted to quilt these, you would actually quilt your batting to your outer piece of fabric first before you began assembling. But I'm not going to be quilting these today, but you absolutely could do that if you so choose. And I'm using the outside edge of my presser foot as a seam guide, so that's going to be about a 1/4 inch seam. And we're going to be starting and ending each of our stitch lines with some back stitches to hold those stitches in place. Come forward, back a few stitches, and then forward again. And back stitch when you get to the end. And because we're going to be batch sewing these, we're just going to chain stitch every single one of these pieces together. So I'm going to slightly lift my presser foot to slide my next piece in, come forward, do some back stitches at the beginning, and then stitch all the way to the edge of this piece. Do a few back stitches here. Come forward, slightly lift my presser foot to slide in the next piece, and we're going to do that same thing and chain stitch each one of our basket pieces together. And now just take a few minutes to clip your threads and snip those pieces apart. Then after clipping your threads, you want to go back and trim off any of that excess batting that you have. That way all of your pieces are square. And then open up and press that lining away from your outer fabric because we want that seam allowance underneath the lining piece just to eliminate some of the bulk on this side where the batting is. And you'll do that on all of your pieces. And then you're going to lay these pieces one on top of the other with the outer fabric right sides together, matching up with the lining fabric right sides together. And you want to make sure that you match up those seams. And then match up the fabric on the edges and pin or clip all of that into place. And we're once again using the outside edge of our presser foot as our seam allowance, and starting off with some forward and backward stitches. And we're going to end with some back stitches here. Slightly lift my presser foot, slide the next piece in there. And we are going to batch sew all of these side seams. Stitching down one side on all of our pieces, remembering to begin and end our stitching with some back stitches. And then snip your baskets apart. And then you're going to sew the seam allowances down each side of your basket, batch stitching those together as well. And one more time, we're going to clip these apart and also clip our threads. And then you will press all of those seam allowances on either side of your basket open. And I'm using a pressing hand, but if you don't have one of these, you can use a rolled up towel to help you hold that steady while you press those open. Some people like to press after everything is finished, but I like to press as I go. I just think it gives a nicer, neater appearance on your projects. And then I turn it right side out and go back over those seams one more time. And it just really makes that look so good. And so I'm just going to take a few minutes and press open all of my seams. Now we are going to be measuring and marking those corners that we're going to cut away to make our boxed corners with, and we're also going to mark the opening that we're going to leave in the lining for turning our little baskets right side out. And you don't have to have one of these grids. I just like to use it because it makes lining everything up easier. And for our 8-inch size here, we're going to measure out a 1 3/4 inch for our boxed corner. So I've got 1 3/4 inches this way, 1 3/4 inches this way. Then I just use that to mark that corner. And I'm going to do that on all 4 corners of my basket. And then I'm going to come down to my lining here and mark to make sure I've got a big enough space for my basket to be pulled through, but it's not going to encroach on those areas that we're going to be cutting off. And for each of our baskets, as your basket gets larger, your corner is going to get larger, and the area that you need to leave open for turning is also going to be larger, so you can pull all of that through. For your 6-inch basket, you will mark 1 1/4 inch boxed corner. Your 8-inch basket is 1 3/4 inch. Your 10-inch basket is 2 1/4 inch. And your 12-inch basket is 2 3/4 inch. And now on each one of your baskets, you're going to clip all the way across the top because we're going to be sewing all the way across the outer portion of the basket. But when we get to the lining, we're going to sew from this edge and back tack here. Leave your opening, back tack here, and stitch down to this edge. And you'll do that on all of the baskets. We're still using the outside edge of our presser foot as our seam guide, and because all of this portion here is going to be cut off anyway, there is no need to back stitch. So you're just going to sew from one end to the other. And I am still going to batch sew and chain stitch these together because it does save some time. then we're going to snip all of these apart. And now we're going to do the other end. We don't need to backstitch here because that's going to be cut off. But when we get to these marks where we've left our openings, we do need to take a few back stitches and come forward. So that seam is going to stay together when we turn these right side out. Then start at the other mark. Couple stitches forward, couple stitches back, and continue on to the edge. And I am going to chain stitch these together as well. Then after clipping everything apart, you are going to come back and cut along those lines that you have drawn. And then we're going to go back and sew our boxed corners. And now to do our boxed corners, first I'm going to come here and finger press this seam open along the bottom here. Then I'm going to separate these pieces carefully. You don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to pull those seams open because we didn't backstitch there. And then we're going to match up our seams, matching up your fabric there as well. And then I just pin it right on those seams there. And we're going to do the same thing on this other edge here as well. Match up your seams and all of the fabric, and then pin or clip that into place. We're going to finger press this open, even where we've left that open for turning. And I just run my fingernails along that just to hold that back. Turn it over, and then pull that seam allowance back as well. Pull our lining pieces away from each other. Line up our seam allowances and those raw fabric edges, and pin or clip that into place. Come to our other corner, match those seams and the other raw fabric edges, and then pin or clip that into place as well. The outside edge of our presser foot is still our guide. We are going to do some forward and some backward stitches here to secure those stitches into place. We're going to make sure those seam allowances stay open as we stitch over them. And we're going to end with some back stitches here. And you're just going to do that same thing and sew every single one of your boxed corners in that same fashion. Next, you're going to go through the opening and grab the other end of your basket and pull this through to turn it right side out. Then take your fingers and run along those seams of your boxed corners and push out those corners. And then do the same thing with the outer fabric, really pushing all of that fabric out to get that seam nice and flat. Then I'm taking my bone folder and just making sure that I get these edges pressed out really well, because it is a little thicker than our lining fabric because of the batting. Then you'll come to the opening and make sure those edges line up with each other and either pin or clip those into place. And then you will either machine stitch, or you could also hand stitch that opening closed. And after all of that is stitched, you are going to tuck that lining down into the outer fabric and just really work those down into each of your baskets. Then you're going to work those top edge seams flat, and you want the lining to be just barely tucked in away from that outer fabric, so the lining isn't going to show from the outside, and you're going to press all of that nice and flat. And now we're going to go and top stitch around the outside edge of each of our baskets, and that is going to give a little bit of a decorative finish at the top, but it's also going to keep our lining from rolling out as well. These larger baskets are going to fit easily over the free arm of the machine, but when we go to stitch our smallest little basket here, we're going to have to do that just a little bit differently. So again, I have removed the platform from my machine to reveal the free arm, and as I said, these larger baskets are all going to fit quite nicely over that free arm. I'm going to be using the inside edge of my presser foot as my seam guide, and I've also increased my stitch length to 3.5, so it's going to give us a nice finish on our top stitch. I'm also starting near one of the seams. Come forward a few stitches, take a few back stitches, and as we stitch, we're going to stitch slowly over that seam because it is a little bit bulky there. And we're just going to stitch all the way around the top of our basket. And as we come back around to where we started, we'll go just a little past that and do some back stitches to secure all of those stitches in place. To stitch our smaller basket, we are still placing the edge on the inside of our presser foot to use as our guide, but we're going to have to stitch that from the inside, beginning near a seam, coming forward, making a few back stitches, sewing slowly over the seam, and keep readjusting your position as you go along the outside edge. Then use your other fingers just to keep that upper edge of the basket out of the way as you sew. And as we come back to where we started, we're once again going to go just a little past that, do a few back stitches, and come forward. And that can feel a little bit fiddly to sew like this, but those stitches on your small basket come out looking just like those on all of your large baskets. And our beautiful set of nesting baskets are now complete. I just love how cute, quick, easy, and fun these little sets are to make. Adorable. And they are also completely reversible. And they also look great if you just want to turn the top down. Maybe make the basket not quite as tall. Absolutely adorable. And I know that anyone who receives this basket set from you will love having such a beautiful way to organize things in their home. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been my pleasure to sew with you. Please subscribe for more kinda shabby but always chic creative inspiration. And until next time, my sweet friends, be blessed.